Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, my name is Marta Firizzola. I'm the Dean of the Icahn School of Biomedical Sciences here at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. It is with great pride and joy that I welcome all of you to the inaugural lab coat ceremony for PhD students. The ceremony serves as a symbolic induction into professional training for newly matriculated PhD students in biomedical sciences and neuroscience programs, as well as the medical scientist training program. Graduate students who have officially joined the lab and confirmed their PhD candidature by successfully defending their thesis proposal exams will also be recognized with a plaque. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dennis Charney and Joel Ehrenclass, Dean of the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, President for Academic Affairs, Mount Sinai Healthcare System. Dr. Charney.
So I'd like to extend my welcome to the students and also the faculty and the families that have been able to attend this ceremony. As Dr. Firizzola mentioned, this is the inaugural, the first lab coat ceremony at Mount Sinai, but it's also one of the few in the United States, the only in New York and among the few in the United States, and it reflects Mount Sinai's commitment to the education of our PhD students and how important they are to our medical school. So I want to say something about the class that is entering Mount Sinai. It is the strongest class, and I don't want to have anybody else who's in the school feel bad, but this is the strongest class academically that we have ever admitted to Mount Sinai, which means it's one of the top PhD classes in the United States. And here are some numbers. The GPA is very high. Over 200 publications have already been published by the class coming in. And I was just told that the average student has already done about 2,500 hours of research. So it's a very highly qualified class. And with the qualifications of the class, and including the students that have already presented their thesis proposal, by being among the best comes a lot of responsibility. And one way of thinking about it is that there's only roughly, let's say 30 schools, medical schools, that have the qualifications, maybe even less, the qualifications that you have coming in to your PhD program with the available resources we have at Mount Sinai. So there's not a lot of numbers of you in the United States. And with that comes the responsibility, because if you look at how many patients still are dying from cancer and heart disease and mental illness and neurological disease and so on and so forth, there's only a few of you that really have the capability of making discoveries that will change the face of medicine. And I said something similar to our medical students who had their white coat ceremony last Thursday. And those who know me tend to know I like to use a lot of corny quotes. And this is a quote from Winston Churchill during the Battle of Britain, when they were facing the Nazis. And, he said, "Never have so many owed so much to so few. Never have so many owed so much to so few." And he was referring to the Royal Air Force, that was able to enable Britain to survive the Nazi onslaught. And from then on, they were called the few, those airmen. Well, you are the few. You have all this kind of responsibility to make discoveries that change the lives of our patients. And it won't be enough that for you ultimately to get grants and publish papers in high-quality journals. You're going to have to make discoveries that change medicine. So now that's a big burden, and we're going to help you. You're going to have great mentors that I've told the same thing to. So, so you will work together as a team. And I'll leave you with one other quote. This was the favorite quote of President John F. Kennedy. And the quote comes from a Breton fisherman who said, "Oh God, thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small. Thy sea is so great, and my boat is so small." So yes, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard for you to make those discoveries. But if not you, who's going to do it? We're going to help you. So congratulations on coming to Mount Sinai and beginning your journey, and I look forward to the ceremony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Charney. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Eric Nessler, Dean for Academic and Scientific Affairs, Director of the Friedman Brain Institute, and Nash Family Professor of the Frischberg Department of Neuroscience. Dr. Nessler.
Thank you very much, Dean Filizzola. It's a great pleasure to welcome our graduate students and their families. As Dennis said, this is our inaugural white coat ceremony. We're the only school in New York that offers this, one of the few in the country. Yet we believe that this is a very important milestone because of the increasing scrutiny placed on the nation's biomedical research enterprise and the unique responsibility that each of you will take once you complete your training. First, why a lab coat? Those of you who know me, this is the first time you've ever seen me in a lab coat. The only time I put on a lab coat is when the Mount Sinai press office wants to take a picture of me. We chose the lab coat as a universal symbol of biomedical research, regardless of one's discipline or experimental approaches. Not everyone uses a pipette, a microscope, a flow cytometer, a cryostat, plus handing out cryostats might be challenging. The lab coat for scientists likely evolved from aprons, smocks, and related protective garments worn in the Middle Ages by blacksmiths and other craftsmen to protect the individuals from spills and contamination. By the mid-1800s, beige and then white was selected as the uniform for scientists, and some scholars speculate that white was selected because it was the least expensive fabric. But white quickly became to signify also cleanliness and respect. And in fact, by 1900, the white lab coat represented the professionalism of science that was so highly respected in our society that physicians actually adopted the white lab coat from scientists. Doctors' coats at the turn of the last century were black to reflect the somberness of their profession. And they adopted the white lab coat to gain respect from the glow of science. And it's funny, today the white lab coat makes a scientist or doctor official. I went online looking to purchase a lab coat, for example, and there are websites that sell lab coats for parties at home. And there's one online site that said, lab coats will make children and adults, and I quote, feel like they're officially putting on their thinking caps, and it's time to innovate. And I gather that even Dr. Bunsen Honeydew, the resident scientist on The Muppet Show, wears a white lab coat. So although science today is under attack from extremists of many political stripes, and I want to emphasize that it's not just one side, science is attacked from all directions, science still represents the promise for the future: economic advancement, improved health, and better lives. And that's the main reason why there remains today a bipartisan consensus in Congress, which has overseen a 22% increase in the NIH budget over the past 3 years. Both houses of Congress just passed an additional $2 billion increase in the NIH budget, now awaiting the president's signature. That's a phenomenal demonstration of faith in our profession. So when we put on this lab coat, figuratively or literally, We accept several obligations from a society that values and respects us considerably, but also expects a great deal in return. And I refer to these obligations, and Dennis alluded to some of them already, as the 4 R's: rigor, reproducibility, robustness, and responsibility. Rigor signifies exactness, carrying out our research with precision and accuracy, with sound experimental design and definitive replication. Reproducibility means that the results that we report to the public can be trusted, that others will be able to repeat them. There's been a lot of discussion over the past decade about our failure for rigor and reproducibility. One important salvo was a paper published by Amgen scientists, for example, in 2012 in the journal Nature, in which the authors found that only 11% of preclinical cancer studies could be replicated. There are many root causes of the replication crisis. In fact, Wikipedia even has a page called Replication Crisis. But I think one that's not adequately recognized are scientific journals. Our so-called best journals have devolved into Time magazine equivalents of science, where only brief, simple, linear, and uncomplicated stories can be published, and from which any complicating data are removed, often at the request of the editors. Placing methods and many figures and data in supplemental material makes the situation far worse. Correcting this distortion created by our top journals has to be a high priority for all of us. NIH's response is overly bureaucratic, such as inclusion of an authentication of reagents section in all grants, which will not fix the problem. Ultimately, the lack of good rigor and reproducibility is our responsibility. It represents, in my view, scientific malpractice by too many of us, and is something that all of us have to address. Now, being rigorous and reproducible is not enough. Our experimental findings must also matter. They must be biologically important with meaningful ramifications. I refer to this as robustness or relevance. Many statistically significant findings are too small in magnitude to have any practical significance. Also, just walk the floor of any national meeting. Thousands of abstracts on the floor, far too many of them using outdated, old methods and lack innovation. The work is stale. And this is true not only for basic research, but for clinical research as well. John Ioannidis at Stanford University has written extensively on this subject. According to him, many, perhaps even most clinical studies are not useful because they are performed for too short a period of time, examine too small a group of patients, and fail to address medically important questions. And many findings are too highly variable in the population to be of diagnostic or prognostic significance for any given individual. Ioannidis suggests improved transparency of studies, cross-checking findings across collaborating laboratories, studies of sufficient duration and sample size to make the patient-centered research that we do more impactful. And here's a warning. The more extravagant the claims of a study, and this is true for basic science and clinical science, the less likely it will be replicated, because biological sciences simply doesn't have that many eureka moments. Yet extravagant claims are needed for publishing in a top journal that is more interested in its impact factor than the truth. That brings us to the 4th R, responsibility. Those of us in academia have the awesome privilege to spend taxpayers' hard-earned income on scientific research that for most of us is more than a job, it's our hobby. The median annual income of an American working full-time in 2017 was just under $40,000. Your PhD stipends are already almost that high, and our postdoctoral fellows make considerably more. That means that people who make much less money than we do are giving us, through their taxes, funding for our research. And we owe our fellow citizens meaningful research that we can trust and that will matter. That means research that will contribute to fundamental advances in science and medicine. As you all embark on your graduate student careers, please keep all of this in mind. Work hard, do what's important, make a difference, and of course enjoy what you do. I consider myself one of the luckiest guys alive because I go to work every day and have had the privilege to run a lab and work with young people like yourselves. I love doing it. It's my passion. And I hope that each and every one of you will find something to do with your PhDs that will be just as rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nessler. I would also like to thank our alumni supporters who are contributing to making this very special ceremony possible. Our deep appreciation also goes to the Mount Sinai Alumni Association for sponsoring the lab coats our students are about to receive. Please join me in thanking them for their incredible generosity. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Peter Palisi, Professor and Chair of the Department of Microbiology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Dr. Palisi.
It's a pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Vincent Racaniello, who was my first PhD student. When he first came into my laboratory, exploring whether he could join my lab for a thesis, I said immediately yes. Because he spoke English so well, and I didn't. Only later did I learn that he had a bachelor's degree in biological sciences from Cornell. Only later did I learn that he had a mother who was an English teacher who indoctrinated him to write well, to speak well, and to think well. So he really got good genes from his mother. But I should also say he had good genes from his father, who was a physician. Only later did I learn that he has fantastic golden hands in the laboratory, and Vincent was a fantastic student. To be honest, he was so good that after this, my laboratory only went downhill. We had 4 papers together working on identifying and mapping the genomes of influenza B and C viruses. Out of those 4 papers, Vincent is the first author on 3. After Mount Sinai, he went to David Baltimore's laboratory at MIT, where he made an infectious clone of the first human animal RNA virus. It was actually poliovirus, which was a major, major breakthrough at the time. And this really got him right away a faculty position at Columbia, and there he was able to identify the poliovirus receptor. Poliovirus is only, can only infect higher primates, humans, etc. And he was able to identify the protein, which is the receptor for this poliovirus. And by putting that gene into a mouse, he was able to actually make a poliomyelitis model for the first time. So really extraordinary scientific achievements. He then stayed in this field of picornaviruses, worked on Coxsackie viruses, rhinoviruses, ecoviruses, etc., and really made major contributions in this field. But where most of the people know his name is because his sort of forays into social media. And he actually founded what is now podcasts, what is now known as This Week in Virology, This Week in Parasitology, This Week in Microbiology. And the last time I talked to him, he had downloads of 1 million, and now he is up to 5 million downloads. So this is quite impressive, and I think this is something really remarkable. He has received many awards. He got the Searle Award, he got the Eli Lilly Award, very important award in microbiology,
and also the Hilleman Award from the American Society of Microbiology. And in 2015, he was elected as president of the American Society of Virology. Thank you very much for coming, Vincent.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back. 43 years ago this month, I was in your shoes. I had just joined the PhD program. It was called Biomedical Sciences here at Mount Sinai, and we didn't have a white coat ceremony. Just threw mine out the other day, actually. It was getting pretty dirty. It was an exciting time. 43 years, now that's a long time. But looking back, one thing I do realize is how completely clueless I was. I didn't know very much about scientific research. I didn't know what I'd be doing one day, but it didn't matter. I was curious, I was enthusiastic, and it all worked out. Now you may ask, how could it have worked out if you were clueless? And my answer is mentors. I found people who I trusted, and I listened to what they told me. Let me give you an example from my career. I just graduated from Cornell in 1974. I didn't know what to do with my life. I went back home. I knew I liked science, so I got a job as a microbiology lab technician. I loved the work, but I soon realized I didn't know anything, so I had to go back to school. Then I read a book called Fever, which is about the discovery of Lassa virus in the 1960s, and I fell in love with viruses. Remember, I'm living at home. I don't have a support network. I don't have any advisors. So on my own, I figured out, well, maybe I need to get a master's degree. So I started applying to programs in the area. Then one night in August 1975, I went to dinner at Ed Kilbourne's home. Ed and I were undergraduates at Cornell. We had become friends, and his parents lived nearby. Now, some of you may recognize the name. Ed's father, Edwin, was for many years chair of microbiology here at Mount Sinai. And after dinner, Dr. Kilbourne said, "Vinny, what are you going to do with your life?" I remember those words. He even called me Vinny. I told him I wanted to work on viruses, which probably pleased him enormously since he was a virologist, and I said I was applying to master's programs. He said, "Forget about that. Come to Mount Sinai and get your PhD." The next week I interviewed, and a week later I moved into a dorm on 96th and 1st Avenue. After 3 lab rotations, I entered Peter's lab for my research. Again, I trusted someone's advice. They said, "Work with Peter. It's going to be great." And when I was ready to leave Peter's lab, I said, "Who should I work for?" And he said, "Only the best, David Baltimore." So at each stage of my career, I found mentors who I trusted, and I listened to them. So my advice to you is, find a mentor you trust and listen. It doesn't do any good if you don't listen to them. To this day, I seek out mentors and listen to them. And to this day, when either Peter or David say, "Jump," I ask, "How high?" Right? You're just beginning what I think is the best career you can have, a career in science. Notice, I didn't call it a job because it's not. Nor are you entitled to a career in science. It's a privilege, not a right. You have to earn that right, and to do so won't be easy. You'll work harder than most of your peers, and you'll make a lot less money. But a career in science is not about money. It's about changing the world. Many humans live long and healthy lives because of science. Not all of you will make seminal discoveries like discovering reverse transcriptase or CRISPR-Cas, but not all of you will enter basic research either. Nevertheless, you'll all play some role in advancing science, whether at the bench, in business, or even in communication. 43 years in science have taught me a lot of other important lessons. One worth telling you is that science is not about you. It's not about building a big lab. It's not about scoring a lot of research money. It's not about scoring papers in prominent journals or even winning a Nobel Prize. It is about discovery. It is about understanding how life works, and everything else is second to that goal. Sometimes your discoveries will improve human lives, but that won't always be your goal. In the 43 years behind me, a new phrase has crept into the science lexicon, and that's translational research. This means nothing more than doing research that has a direct use, like making a vaccine or curing a disease. The problem is that the public has come to believe that translational research is all there is, or all that there should be. They don't understand that translational research stems from discoveries that were not intended to cure anything, but were the fruits of a scientist's curiosity. Abraham Flexner recognized this problem way back in 1939 in an essay he wrote called "The Usefulness of Useless Knowledge," and I quote from that. "I am not for a moment suggesting that everything that goes on in laboratories will ultimately turn to some unexpected practical use, or that an ultimate practical use is its actual justification. Much more, I am pleading for the abolition of the word use and for the freeing of the human spirit." And he goes on to say, "We have taken Hale and Rutherford and Einstein and their peers millions upon millions of miles into the uttermost realms of space, and on the other loosed the boundless energy imprisoned in the atom. What they have done out of sheer curiosity has transformed human life." The key is to have the right balance between what I'll call curiosity-driven fundamental research and translational research. I'm not sure that most people realize this. I'll bet that members of Congress, which of course appropriates much of the biomedical research dollars in this country, don't either. It's a problem you're going to have to deal with in your careers. I want to tell you about a few other problems with science. They will affect your careers, and maybe your generation will solve them. The first concerns the publication of scientific findings, the very means by which our careers advance. You need to publish your work in journals because that's how you'll be judged at every step of your career, whether it be finding a new job, getting grant support, getting tenure, and much more. We wouldn't have a problem if you were judged solely by the contents of your papers. Unfortunately, you are often judged, sometimes in addition to, sometimes only by, which journal the work is published in. This issue was less of a problem when I was a PhD student, but has grown substantially in the past 43 years. Over that time, publishers have learned that they can make billions of dollars in profit by publishing our work. The elite journals, Science, Cell, and Nature, and their derivatives maintain an exclusive cachet by limiting the number of papers they review and publish. This practice inflates the journal impact factor, a supposed measure of the impact of work in the field. The problem is that not all good science is published in these luxury journals, and not all of what they publish is good. Yet when it comes to hiring, promotion, and funding, the committees involved make decisions based on the journal and often not the contents of the paper. In other words, the professional editors of luxury journals are playing an enormous role in crucial decisions about our careers. I hope you'll agree with me that this is unacceptable. I prefer that my scientific colleagues make the decisions about my career. The luxury journals have a grip on our careers, which they don't want to relax because it is a lucrative grip, but the practice has to stop. There's another problem in scientific publishing which revolves around the fact that the research we do is largely supported by tax dollars, but many journals keep scientific papers behind a paywall, so the public can't see what they're paying for. This practice is unacceptable, yet it drives profits for journals. Open access has been the solution to this problem, but not for all journals. The Public Library of Science and many society journals, like those of the American Society for Microbiology, the Microbiology Society, are open access. But the luxury journals won't make all their journals open. To do so would be to forfeit their enormous library subscription revenue. But why do these journals have to make so much money? Do we really need printed journals? And how expensive is it to review papers and simply post them online? It turns out not very much, but the problem is that the luxury journals also spend a good deal of money on the commentaries that fill up the front of each issue. Why should the cost of these be carried by scientists? Solving these two publishing problems, the impact factor and open access, will not be easy. We are partly responsible for creating them, and now we're addicted. But I think there's a solution, and I call it bioarchive with peer review. You've probably heard of bioRxiv. It's essentially a server run by Cold Spring Harbor. You submit your preprints there. Everyone can see them. Eventually, they get reviewed and published in a different journal. I propose to cut out the journals. Let's add a peer reviewing system to bioRxiv, keep it open access, and the cost to maintain it should be far less and could be supported by page charges and advertising. So the ideal science publishing platform is where the site of publication is irrelevant. What matters in the science. I envision a world where one day we don't hear congratulations on your cell paper, but rather congratulations on your paper identifying the cell receptor for poliovirus. Another science problem that impacts all of you and the public is science and the public. If you're like me, you bristle at the idea that there are alternative facts. We have a president who disdains science. He doesn't believe in climate change and vaccines. He took 19 months into his administration to appoint a science advisor. Much of the public is apathetic to science and wants to know nothing about it, despite the fact that it makes their lives better. I'm not sure of the source of this disdain, but one possibility is a poor science education starting in elementary school. I think scientists must take part of the blame for a science disinterested public. Few of us take the time to tell the public what we're doing. We leave that to science writers. Some of these writers do a good job, most do not, and they certainly don't have the passion that we do for the subject. And as I'm sure you surely know, passion is the key to good teaching. When I was a student, communicating science to the public was hard. The internet and social media has changed all that. It's now easy to engage the public with blogs, videos, podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I can tell you that the public wants to hear about what you do. If scientists engage the public as a single voice, we could easily drown out those who don't believe in vaccines or climate change. To touch on a problem I mentioned earlier, these venues could be used to tell your story of how curiosity drove what turned out to be a fundamental discovery. Some of my favorite stories include restriction enzymes, PCR, CRISPR-Cas. You should keep a few of them in the back of your mind for instant use in public situations. As you move forward in your career, there'll be many demands on your time, and it'll be easy for you to ignore communication. But I urge you to start now, establish good habits. There are many ways for you to communicate through writing or multimedia, or you could simply have a presence on Twitter or Facebook where much of the public is. And if you don't want to do any of that, here's a simple way to communicate your science. The next time someone asks you, what do? You tell them, I work for you. The conversation will surely continue. A career in science is an amazing journey. You get to solve problems, you get to talk with smart and clever people on a daily basis, and you help to make the world a better place. And by the way, only science does that, not business, not law, not government. They're just facilitators for us. I wish all of you a fulfilling career in this wonderful field, and don't forget to always be curious, passionate, and kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agnello. The next part of this ceremony, the part many of you have been anxiously awaiting, will be the presentation of 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD students with the lab coats as a symbolic induction into rigorous scientific training. The students will receive their lab coats from distinguished members of the graduate school faculty who exemplify outstanding graduate teaching and mentoring. It is my pleasure to introduce the 8 program directors who will be coaching the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes. Please come forward as I call your name. Dr. Margaret Barron, Director of the Medical Sciences Training Program. Dr. George Huntley, Director of the PhD Program in Neuroscience. Dr. Jeremiah Faith, Co-Director of the Immunology Training Area. Dr. Florence Marlowe, Co-Director of the Development Regeneration Stem Cells Training Area. Dr. Doris Germain, Co-Director of the Cancer Biology Training Area. Dr. Jean Lim, Co-Director of the Microbiology Training Area. Dr. Andrew Sharp, co-director of Genetics and Data Sciences Training Area, and Dr. Eric Sobi, co-director of the Pharmacology and Therapeutics Discovery Training Area. It is also my pleasure to introduce this year's roster reader, Dr. Matthew O'Connell, Senior Associate Dean for Curriculum, Recruitment and Admissions for the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences. Matthew, please come forward.
Thank you, Mark. Well, welcome everybody to the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes. It's truly an honor to be part of this special ceremony today. I kindly ask those of you in the audience to hold your applause until all 8 students in each group have been called to the stage and quoted. Please note that I'll be reading each student's preferred name, which may differ from that in the program. Okay, so we get started. It's my pleasure to call up the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes. Okay, first group. Rawan Abdalal, Mohammed Fakan Alzal, Remy Albuquerque, Fatima Amanat, Varun Arvin, Natasha Berryman, James Carter, and Alana Coate. Well, I guess everybody else now knows what to do. All right. We continue. Group 2, Pamela Deval, Kareem Alaobi, Michael Fernando, Marissa Goff, Christopher Guevara, Daisy Hoagland, Keno Hutchison, and Philip Wang. Okay, we're getting there. All right. Group 3 now. Sarah King, Fred Kwan, Amanda Leathead, Laura Lukarski, Catherine Lindblad, Kelsey Lucerne, Zarayan Mai, and David Melnikoff. Okay. We continue. Angelica Minia Toribio, Javia Mohammed, Christine Wen, Madeline O'Brien, Luisana Polino, Manuradi Pereira, and Madeline Perkins. Okay. We continue. Tamar Plitt, Taylor Pullinger, Raveen Rathnasinghe, Joseph Roth, Christian Stevens, Andrew Stewart, Robert Sweeney, and Colin Teague. Wait for your picture. Okay. All right. Skylar Ull, Camille Van Nest, Oliver Van Oekelen, Yang Zhu, Hannah Young, Joseph Zaki, Gregory Zilberg, and Joel Kim. And now our final group, Matthew Spindler, Sahil Agarwal, William Zhao, Louise Mao, Amara Plaza Jennings, and David Gonzalez. And so with that, one more final congratulations to the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes. And students, stand up and take the applause of everybody. Congratulations.
It is now time to call on stage the graduate students who have officially joined the lab and confirmed their PhD candidature by successfully defending their thesis proposal exams by August 2018. The students will be recognized with a plaque and will walk on stage with their PIs or their training area director in case the PI is not in attendance today. Dr. Margaret Barron, Senior Associate Dean for MD PhD Education, will read the names of the MD PhD candidates, while Dr. Basil Hans, Senior Associate Dean for Student Affairs and Career Development and Associate Dean for Graduate School of Wellbeing and Resilience, will read the names for the PhD candidates. Dr. Barron.
I will call MD PhD students and their PIs up to the stage. Actually, it'll be a group of two. I kindly ask those of you in the audience to hold your applause until after the group is complete. Will the confirmed MD PhD candidates who are in attendance today please come up on stage with their PIs as I call your names? Alexandra Keenan and Dr. Avi Mayan. Ryan Neff and Dr. Eric Sobey. It is. It is now my pleasure to call on stage Dr. Basil Hans.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real treat to be here, and I want to welcome all of you today. I'll be calling the PhD students and their PIs to the stage in groups of 4 students. So I'd ask that all of you hold your applause until all 4 students come forward. So will the confirmed PhD candidates in attendance today please come on stage with your mentors as I call your name. So first is Diana Akoibo and her mentor Yasmin Hurd. Aaron Bender and his mentors Carmen Argman and Sander Hooten. Kiata Campana and her mentor Eric Sobey. Denise Krut and her mentor Daniela Schiller. Tyler DiStefano and his mentor James Iatrides. Phil Dong and his MTA director George Huntley. Rachel Ann Garib Singh and her mentor Avner Schlesinger. Sindhura Gobanat and her mentor, Ross Kagan. Denise Jerzazak and her mentor, Viviana Simon. Allison Kahn and her MTA director, Florence Marlowe. Catherine Leclerc and her mentor, Scott Russo. Emma McGregor and her mentor, Viviana Simon. Sarah Montgomery and her MTA director, Eric Sobey. Nope. George Huntley. Just switched MTAs. Shika Nayar and her mentor, Judy Cho, sorry. Kevin Norman and his mentor, Hiro Morishita. Reyes Rockman and his mentor, Avner Schlesinger. Tani Rockman and her mentor, Yasmin Hurd. Nivedita Saxena and her mentor, Michael Rendell. And the final 2, Nicholas Upright and his MTA director, George Huntley, and Mira Varshnia and her mentor, Eric Sobey. So I think Now is a good time for all of those honored today to go ahead and stand up, please. And let's give those who are here in support of you, your parents, your family members, and your friends, a thank you applause, and thank them for all they've done to help you get here today. And I now have the pleasure to present George Huntley, who was selected by you, the students, to administer the student oath, followed by the faculty pledge. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Basil, and I am deeply honored to have been chosen by you guys to read the oath, so thank you very much. Congratulations to the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes, and to the students who have officially joined the lab. I now ask them to stand and join me as we recite our PhD oath. Before I begin reading the oath, I would like to invite all PhD doctoral candidates and PhDs in the audience and seated behind me to stand so we may all together dedicate and rededicate our commitment to our profession. The oath is printed in the program booklet on page 9. I willingly pledge to uphold the highest levels of integrity, professionalism, scholarship, and honor. I will conduct my research and professional endeavors with honesty and objectivity. I will apply the highest standards of rigor and respect for the generation and application of knowledge, and fully acknowledge the contributions of others. I will not allow financial gain or ambition to cloud my judgment or decision-making, nor cause harm to society or subjects of research. I will embark on the furthering of knowledge through the respectful interaction and collaboration with my colleagues and community without prejudice or exclusion. I will be a role model and use my skills to inspire, mentor, and empower future generations, instilling in them the highest principles of ethical behavior. As witnessed by all present today, and in the tradition of graduates before me, I do affirm to uphold these guiding principles. Everyone may be seated. And now I ask all faculty members of the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai to stand and join me in the faculty pledge. The faculty pledge is printed on the back of your program booklet. As teachers and mentors for our students, we pledge to maintain the highest professional standards in all of our interactions with students, patients, colleagues, and staff. We pledge our utmost effort to ensure that all components of the educational program for students will be of the highest quality. We will respect all students as individuals without regard to gender, race, national origin, religion, or sexual orientation. We will not tolerate anyone who manifests disrespect or who expresses biased attitudes towards any student. We will not tolerate any abuse or exploitation of students. In an effort to nurture personal development, we pledge that students will have adequate time for reflection, as well as personal and family obligations. In nurturing both the intellectual and professional development of our students, we will celebrate achievement of academic excellence and demonstration of the highest virtues of our profession. Please be seated.
I would like to thank the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences staff for their assistance today, and again, the Mount Sinai Alumni Association for their ongoing support. All present are invited to attend the reception in the lobby outside the auditorium and on the lower level. Please remain seated until those on stage have exited the auditorium. I also ask the 2018 matriculating PhD and MD PhD classes to remain seated for group photos. The first annual lab coat ceremony of the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences at Mount Sinai is now concluded. Thank you and congratulations to all.